My name is Mia Anderson. I'm 38 years old, and last Tuesday, standing in the middle of a crowded auction arena, watching a stranger raise his paddle one final time, I sold something that was never supposed to matter to anyone but me. $190,000. That's what my waste of money turned into. But the number isn't the part that stayed with me. It was the silence right after. That strange, hollow quiet where everything finally made sense, including the man who once sat across from me and told me I was throwing my future away. Ryan Carter, my boyfriend of 3 years, the man who never believed in anything I built until it was worth something. Let me tell you how we got here. 3 years ago, I found the car sitting in a collapsing barn on the edge of a property that smelled like dust, old wood, and forgotten stories. The owner was selling everything after his father passed. He didn't know what he had, but I did. Even under layers of rust, even with the interior chewed apart and the engine completely seized, I saw it. 1969 Dodge Charger RT. Numbers matching. 440 Magnum. Factory Hemi orange. One of maybe a couple hundred built like that. My heart didn't race. It locked in. Because I knew exactly what it could become. I bought it for $8,500. Cash. Money I had spent 5 years saving. At the time, Ryan and I had been dating about 6 months, and I still remember the way he looked at me when I told him. "You spent $8,000 on that?" he asked, like I just confessed to something embarrassing. "It's not just a car," I said carefully. "It's rare. It's an RT. These don't just show up anymore. It doesn't even run, Mia." His voice wasn't loud. It was worse. Flat. Certain. "You could have bought something reliable, something normal." I tried to explain the history, the value, the fact that barn finds like this were disappearing every year. He just leaned back, shaking his head. "Women and their impulses," he muttered. "What a waste." That should have been my first warning. But I didn't walk away. I stored the Charger at my friend Rick's shop, paid $200 a month for a small bay in the corner. It wasn't glamorous. It smelled like oil and metal and effort, but it was mine. Every weekend I was there, taking it apart piece by piece, cataloging everything, learning more than I thought I ever would. And every weekend, Ryan had something to say. "Another Saturday at that garage? How much did you waste this time? You smell like motor oil. It's not exactly attractive." At first, I laughed it off. Then I explained. Then I defended. Eventually, I just stopped responding. Because the truth was, I wasn't neglecting him. We still went out, still had dinners, trips. I still showed up in the relationship. But apparently, me having something that was mine, something I cared about, felt like a threat to him. Year 1 was slow. Disassembly. Rust repair. Cutting out bad metal and welding in new panels. I spent around $4,000. Ryan tracked every dollar like it personally offended him. "That's $12,000 total now," he'd say, "on something that still doesn't run." $12,500, he corrected once, if you include storage. Like he was auditing my life. Year 2, I rebuilt the engine. New pistons, camshaft, heads, full machine work. Another $6,000. That's when he really lost it. $18,000, Mia. $18,000. You could have bought an actual working car. "It'll be worth more when it's done." "If it's ever done," he snapped. "If it even runs. You're delusional." I remember standing there, hands still dirty from grease, looking at him, and realizing something quiet but important. He wasn't worried about me. He just didn't respect me. The breaking point came about 6 months ago. I turned the key, and for the first time in 2.5 years, the engine came to life. It wasn't perfect. It shook. It roared unevenly, but it ran. And I felt something in my chest crack open in the best way possible. I filmed it, posted it online. Within a week, it had over 50,000 views, comments, messages, people who understood exactly what that moment meant. And then the offers started. The first one was $35,000. Ryan saw the message over my shoulder. Wait, someone wants to pay 35 grand for that? Yeah, I said, but I'm not selling. He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Are you serious? That's double what you put in. It's not about the money, I said quietly. It's about finishing it. That's when something shifted, not in me, in him. He didn't see a waste anymore. He saw a number. And for the first time in 3 years, Ryan Carter looked at my project and saw value. That was the moment everything started to change. Not all at once, not in some dramatic, explosive way, but slowly, subtly, like a crack forming beneath the surface of something that used to feel stable. After that $35,000 offer, Ryan didn't mock the car the same way anymore. He didn't call it a rust bucket to my face. Didn't roll his eyes every time I mentioned the shop. But the respect I had quietly hoped for, it didn't appear. It just shifted shape. Maybe you should think about selling, he said one night over dinner, swirling his drink like he was discussing something casual. I mean, that's real money, Mia. I told you, I replied, keeping my tone even. I'm finishing it. He gave me that look. The one that always made it seem like he was being patient, when really he was just waiting for me to agree with him. Just don't get too attached to something that's supposed to be an investment, he said. Investment. That word lingered, because suddenly it wasn't my project anymore. In his mind, it had become an asset, a shared future, something he had a quiet stake in, without ever having put anything into it. A few weeks later, I entered the Charger into a local car show. It wasn't finished, not even close. Primer gray, interior half done, chrome missing in places, but it ran. And people noticed. They didn't see what it was. They saw what it could be. I remember standing a few feet back, watching a small crowd gather around it, listening to strangers point out details, talk about rarity, ask questions with genuine curiosity. For the first time, I wasn't defending it. I was just letting it speak. It won Best Work in Progress. The trophy was cheap plastic, probably worth $10, but that wasn't the point. Ryan saw the crowd, saw the attention, saw the way people looked at me differently, and that's when the tone shifted again. Maybe you should get it appraised, he said that night, for insurance, just to be smart. I studied him for a second, because this wasn't concern. This was calculation. Already did, I said. He paused. And $65,000 in its current condition. His reaction was instant. Sharp inhale, eyes widening just slightly before he tried to hide it. 65, he repeated. Yeah. Silence. Then, you should sell it. No. Mia, that's insane. That's a huge return. I'm not done. With what money? He asked, a little too quickly. The same money I've been saving, I said. The stupid car fund you always joke about. That's when the argument started. Not loud at first, just tense, tight. You're being selfish, he said, leaning forward. You're pouring everything into this car and ignoring what actually matters. I felt something cold settle in my chest. What exactly am I ignoring? Our future. There it was. I let that sit between us for a second. Our future, I repeated. Yes, he said, like it was obvious. At some point, you have to start thinking about more than just yourself. I stared at him, really stared, because suddenly, this conversation wasn't about the car anymore. Ryan, I said slowly, what future are you talking about? He blinked. What do you mean? I mean, what specific future are you referring to? He leaned back, frustrated now. A house, stability, something real, not this. He gestured vaguely, like everything I cared about could be dismissed with a flick of his hand. Fantasy project. Fantasy. I almost laughed. The fantasy project that's currently worth $65,000, I asked quietly. That's not guaranteed, he snapped. That's just an estimate. And your plan is what? I pressed. Sell it now, take the money, and do what with it? He hesitated, just for a second, but I saw it. We put it towards something real, he said. We. That word landed harder than anything else, because we had never had that conversation, not once. We, I repeated. Yes, we, he said, like I was the one being unreasonable. We've been together 3 years, Mia. When do you start thinking like a couple? And that's when it clicked. Not all at once, but enough. Enough for something inside me to shift permanently. Ryan, I said, my voice calmer than I expected. We've never talked about buying a house together. That's because you're too busy playing mechanic, he shot back. But obviously that's where this is going. Obviously? I echoed. Yes, obviously. What do you think happens after 3 years? You think we just stay like this forever? I think, I said carefully, that those are conversations you actually have, not assumptions you build in your head. The look on his face changed from frustration to something sharper. You're unbelievable, he said. You really don't see it, do you? See what? That I've been investing in this relationship while you've been, what, playing in a garage? Investing. There it was again, that word. Except this time, it wasn't about the car. It was about me. And suddenly, I understood something I hadn't been willing to see before. Ryan, I said quietly, what exactly do you think you've invested? His jaw tightened. Time, he said. Energy, commitment. I nodded slowly. And financially? I asked. He hesitated again. Just a fraction. But it was enough. Everything I've spent on us, he said. We split groceries, I replied. We split bills. I pay the rent. That's not the point. No, I cut in gently. It actually is. The silence that followed felt different, not tense, clear, like something had finally come into focus. Then I said the thing that ended us. We're not building the same future. He stared at me like I'd just blindsided him. What is that supposed to mean? It means, I said, standing up slowly, you've been planning a life using things that were never yours. That hit hard, because his expression shifted from anger to something dangerously close to panic. You're twisting this, he said quickly. I'm trying to think long term. You're the one being short-sighted. No, I said. I'm the one being honest. The argument didn't explode. It didn't need to. Because we both knew. This wasn't about compromise anymore. This was about ownership, control, expectation, and the realization that we had been standing in two completely different versions of the same relationship. He packed that night. Not everything. Just enough to make a statement. Clothes, a few personal things. The rest, he left behind. Jewelry, shoes, random items scattered like placeholders. I'll get the rest later, he said at the door. I nodded. Take your time. I didn't ask him to stay, and he didn't ask me to stop him. The door closed quietly, and just like that, 3 years ended without a single dramatic moment. But here's the thing. That wasn't the end. Not even close. Because 3 weeks later, I got the charger back from paint, and it was perfect. Not good. Not impressive. Perfect. The kind of finish that didn't just reflect light. It held it. Deep, hemi orange. Polished so clean it looked like it was still wet. Every panel straight. Every line sharp. It didn't look restored. It looked reborn. I stood there in Rick's shop, staring at it, barely breathing. 3 years, every weekend, every dollar, every argument, all of it, right there in front of me. And for the first time, there was no one standing next to me telling me it wasn't worth it. I took photos, posted them online. The response was immediate, explosive. Messages flooded in, offers. Collectors asking questions. People who understood exactly what they were looking at. And then one message stood out. Barrett Jackson, one of the biggest collector car auction houses in the world. They wanted my charger. I thought it was a joke at first. It wasn't. They asked for documentation. Everything. Receipts. Photos. Build history. I sent all of it. 3 years of work, every detail, every step. The next day, they called. Based on current market trends and the quality of your restoration, the representative said, We estimate your vehicle could bring between $150,000 and $180,000 at auction. I didn't respond right away because for a second, I couldn't. $180,000 for the thing I had been told was worthless. I agreed to consign it. The auction was in 6 weeks, and that was when Ryan came back. I was at Rick's shop the day Ryan came back, not thinking about him. Not expecting him, just focused on the car, on the small details that suddenly felt bigger now that strangers were attaching 6-figure numbers to something I used to work on in silence. I heard the door open behind me, footsteps, 2 sets, and something about the rhythm of them made my shoulders tense before I even turned around. Mia, his voice. Familiar, too familiar. I looked up slowly. Ryan stood there like he had stepped out of a different version of his life. Clean, polished, expensive, designer jacket, fresh haircut. The kind of effort he never used to make when we were together. And next to him, a man in a suit, holding a briefcase. Of course, I didn't smile. Ryan, I said calmly. It's been 2 months. His gaze flickered to the charger behind me, and for a split second, I saw it. Not admiration. Not pride. Greed. We need to talk, he said. I wiped my hands on a cloth and leaned back against the workbench. Are you here for your stuff? He ignored that. This is Trevor, he said, gesturing to the man beside him. He's a lawyer. That actually made me laugh. Not loudly. Just enough. Because of course he brought a lawyer. Trevor stepped forward, adjusting his jacket like he was walking into a boardroom instead of a garage that smelled like oil and metal. Ms. Anderson, he said smoothly, my client has retained me to discuss the equitable distribution of assets accumulated during your relationship. I blinked once, then I smiled. What assets? Ryan's jaw tightened. That car, he said. Don't play dumb. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. We were dating, I said, not married. His expression hardened. I supported you for 3 years while you built that. Supported me. The words almost felt surreal. You mocked me for 3 years, I replied just as evenly. Every single day. I contributed to our life, he shot back, while you poured everything into that car. We split groceries, I said. 50-50. I paid the rent, I paid for the car, I paid for the parts, I paid for the labor. Trevor cleared his throat. My client recalls a different dynamic, he said, including emotional labor, household contributions, and opportunity cost. I turned my head slightly. Opportunity cost? I repeated. Ryan stepped in quickly, like he thought that phrase would carry weight. I could have been with someone else, he said. Someone who actually wanted a future. I stared at him, really stared, because that wasn't pain. That wasn't regret. That was calculation dressed up as emotion. You chose to stay, I said quietly. No one asked you to. Rick, somewhere behind me, made a quiet, choking sound, like he was trying not to laugh. Ryan ignored him. That car is worth almost $200,000, he pressed. You couldn't have done it without me. I tilted my head. Name one thing you did, I said. He opened his mouth, closed it. Name one, I repeated. Silence. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Ryan's confidence cracked just a little. I was there, he said finally. I stayed. I supported you emotionally. You called it a rust bucket last week on Instagram, I said. His face flushed. Those were... I have screenshots, I added calmly. That shut him up. For a second. Then, he played what he thought was his winning move. I'm pregnant. The words landed in the shop like something heavy hitting concrete. Rick dropped a wrench behind me. Trevor froze. And for a moment, everything went completely still. I looked at Ryan, at the way his eyes searched my face, waiting, expecting panic, guilt, shock, something. Instead, I exhaled, slowly. Ryan, I said gently, That's not possible. His expression faltered. Yes, it is, he insisted quickly. 6 weeks. I nodded once. Then I said the one thing that ended whatever leverage he thought he had. I had a tubal ligation 5 years ago. Silence. Real silence this time. The kind that strips everything down to truth. Ryan's face went pale. Trevor looked at him, then back at me, then back at him again. Ryan started, that's not... I have the paperwork, I said, if you'd like to see it. Trevor closed his briefcase. I think we're done here. Trevor, Ryan snapped, panic creeping in now. You're my lawyer. You told me you were pregnant with her child, Trevor replied flatly. That materially changes the situation. Ryan's composure shattered, just like that. He turned back to me, desperation replacing arrogance. Mia, please, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I made a mistake, okay? But we were together for 3 years. That has to count for something. It does, I said calmly. Hope flickered across his face. It counts as 3 years of you telling me I was wasting my life, I finished. That hope died instantly. He tried one last angle. I'll go public, he said. Tell everyone how you used me and threw me away once you got rich. I didn't even react. Go ahead, I said. I have 3 years of messages where you call my project stupid, worthless, and embarrassing. I paused. And that post from last week where you called me a grease-covered joke trying to play mechanic. Trevor exhaled slowly. Ryan didn't have a response. So he did what people do when they run out of options. He left. Fast. Trevor lingered just long enough to give me a small, apologetic nod before following him out. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. Because Ryan didn't disappear quietly. He escalated. First, he called my mother, told her I had abandoned him, that I was walking away from responsibility. She called me in a panic. Until I explained. Until I told her about the surgery. There was a long pause on the phone. Then, that lying little... She stopped herself. I never liked him. That was the first time I laughed about any of it. Then he tried something else. Called my insurance company. Pretended to be my husband. Tried to get information about the Chargers policy. They flagged it immediately and called me to verify. I locked everything down. Changed passwords. Put alerts on every account. And still, he didn't stop. The peak came at the Barrett Jackson preview event. I was standing next to the Charger, answering questions, talking to collectors, watching people study every detail like it mattered, because now it did. And then I saw him, Ryan, walking in like he belonged there, dressed perfectly, confident again, like the last conversation had never happened. He walked straight up to a group of collectors near my car, smiled, and started talking. I'm her partner, he said smoothly. We've been working on this restoration together for 3 years. I didn't interrupt right away. I watched. Because sometimes people expose themselves better without help. One of the collectors, an older man with sharp eyes, nodded politely. Beautiful work, he said. What did you do on the engine rebuild? Ryan froze. Just slightly. Oh, you know, he said vaguely. We upgraded it. Made it stronger. What specs? The man asked. Ryan hesitated. The bigger one, he said. I stepped forward then. It's a numbers matching 440 Magnum, I said calmly. 375 horsepower, factory rated. The man nodded, impressed. Ryan looked at me. I held his gaze. She wasn't involved in the restoration, I added. Ryan forced a smile. I provided emotional support, he said. A woman nearby laughed softly. Honey, she said, I've been restoring cars for 40 years. Emotional support doesn't rebuild carburetors. That was it. That was the moment. The shift. The collapse. Security approached shortly after. Ryan tried to argue. Raised his voice. Started talking about shared assets and common law. They escorted him out anyway. And as the doors closed behind him, I felt something settle. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just finality. That night, his mother called me. Her voice was quiet, embarrassed. Mia, I'm so sorry. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. It's not your fault, I said. There was a pause. Then she asked softly, Is it true about the pregnancy? Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I didn't raise him to be like this." "No," I said gently. "You didn't." She sighed. "How much is the car worth now?" "Between 150 and 180, I said. She let out a low whistle. "Well," she said, her voice warming just slightly, "at least someone in this situation has class." After we hung up, I sat there for a while, thinking about everything. About how quickly things had escalated. About how clearly people reveal themselves when there's something to gain. And for the first time since Ryan walked back into my life, I felt completely, undeniably done. The auction was 2 days away, and whatever happened next, he wasn't part of it. The night of the auction didn't feel real. It felt staged, like I had somehow stepped into someone else's life, someone louder, more certain, more important than I had ever been. Bright lights, polished floors, rows of collectors sitting with quiet confidence, paddles in hand, like they already knew how the night would unfold. And in the center of it all, my car. No, not just a car. 3 years of my life, sitting under perfect lighting, hemi-orange glowing like it had never known rust, never known doubt, never known the version of itself people once dismissed. I stood off to the side, hands clasped tightly in front of me, trying to breathe, trying not to think about everything that had led to this moment. "Mia," Rick said quietly beside me, nudging my shoulder. "Whatever happens, you already won." I nodded, but my eyes never left the stage. They rolled it forward slowly. The announcer's voice filled the room, smooth, practiced, confident. "Ladies and gentlemen, a beautifully restored 1969 Dodge Charger RT, numbers matching 440 Magnum." The words blurred after that because the bidding started fast. 80,000. A hand went up. 85. Another. 90. 95. 100,000. The number hit harder than I expected because it wasn't hypothetical anymore. It wasn't an estimate. It was real. And it was climbing. 110? 120? The pace didn't slow. It accelerated, like something had finally been unleashed. 2 bidders. Locked in, back and forth. No hesitation. 140. 150. My heart was pounding now, not from anxiety, not from fear, but from something else, something deeper. Validation. 160, 170. The room had gone quieter, focused. Everyone watching the same moment unfold. 175. A pause. Just a second. Then, 180. I exhaled slowly. That number. The one they estimated. The one Ryan had built his entire argument around. We were there. And we weren't done. 185. A voice from the back. Clear. Sharp. Confident. The room shifted. 190. Silence. The kind that stretches just long enough to feel heavy. Going once. My hands tightened. Going twice. And then sold. The gavel came down. Sharp. Final. $190,000 for the thing I had been told would never run, would never matter, would never be worth anything. I didn't move at first, couldn't, because it wasn't just about the money. It was about every moment that led here, every doubt, every argument. Every time I stood alone in that garage, while someone I loved told me I was wasting my life. Rick hugged me, hard. "You did it," he said. I nodded, but I still couldn't speak. Because some victories don't feel loud, they feel quiet, certain, complete. After fees, I walked away with around $170,000. More money than I had ever held in my life. But before I could even process it, my phone started vibrating. Again. And again. And again. Ryan. Of course. I stared at the screen for a second before answering. "You lied," he said immediately. I blinked. "About what?" "The price," he snapped. "You said 150 to 180. "That was the estimate," I said calmly. "It went higher. A beat." "Then I deserve half." I almost smiled. "Of what?" "That car," he said, like it was obvious. We built that together. No, I said quietly. I built it. I'll sue you. Okay. And I hung up. He did sue, not for half. He wasn't that delusional, but for the maximum small claims would allow, $10,000. His claim? Unjust enrichment, breach of implied contract. I showed up to court with a folder. Neat. Organized. Every receipt, every transaction, every message. 3 years of proof. Ryan showed up with photos, a handwritten list of supposed contributions. No receipts, no documentation, just claims. The judge didn't take long, 5 minutes, maybe. You were dating, she said plainly. The vehicle was purchased prior to the relationship. All restoration costs were paid by the defendant. There is no legal basis for your claim. Case dismissed, just like that. Ryan didn't look at me as we walked out, didn't say anything, because there was nothing left to say. But that still wasn't the end of it, because the truth has a way of spreading, and lies don't hold up well under pressure. Word got around about the lawsuit, about the auction, about the pregnancy claim. That last one hit the hardest. Because Ryan had told people he was pregnant for sympathy, for leverage, for money. And eventually, that story reached the one person he didn't expect, his new boyfriend. Yes, Ryan had moved on quickly after we broke up. Someone new. Someone he had convinced the baby was his. And when the truth came out, that ended too. His mother called me one last time. I don't even know what to say anymore, she admitted quietly. You don't have to say anything, I told her. She admitted it, she said. There was never a pregnancy. She thought if she could get money from you, she could impress him. I closed my eyes briefly, because somehow that still managed to be worse than I expected. I'm sorry, she added. I know, I said gently. After that, I didn't hear from Ryan again. And honestly, that was the best ending I could have asked for. As for me, I paid off my house, invested most of the rest, and a few weeks later, I bought another project. 1970 Plymouth Cuda. Worse condition than the Charger, which for some reason made me love it even more. But this time, things were different, because this time, I wasn't alone. His name is Ethan. And from the beginning, he never asked how much the car would be worth. He asked what it could become. The first time I brought him to the shop, he didn't stand back, didn't judge, didn't calculate. He picked up a tool. Show me where to start, he said. Last weekend, he surprised me with a full parts catalog, organized, researched, highlighted with notes. He's even learning how to weld. His first welds were rough, messy, uneven. And he laughed about it, didn't hide it, didn't pretend to be better than he was. And somehow, that meant more than anything Ryan ever said, because that's the difference between someone who waits for the result and someone who shows up for the process. Ryan wanted the outcome, the number, the validation. Ethan? He's here for the work, for the long hours, for the parts that don't make sense yet. And as for the Charger, the buyer put it in his museum. There's a small placard next to it now, telling its story. People walk past it every day. Look at it. Admire it. Take photos, and they see a finished car. They don't see the nights, the doubt, the arguments, the person I had to become to finish it. But I do. And that's enough. Because in the end, it was never just a car. It was a filter. And it showed me exactly who people really were. Ryan got nothing. No money. No credit. No place in the story. Just a reputation he built himself. And me? I got everything that actually mattered. And the last time he tried to reach out, asking for closure, I didn't respond with words. I sent him a photo of the car in the museum under perfect lighting with my name on the placard. That's all the closure he'll ever get.